It's November 22nd, 1991. Ricardo is born in Australia. He grew up doing the same things everyone else does. Eat, drink, gamble, until eventually he decides, maybe I'll try out a game called Counter-Strike.
Brandon, I believe in you.
It turns out he really likes Counter-Strike. He plays it way more than he should, but this ends up paying off. It gets to a point where he is simply better than everyone else. His weapon of choice? It's of course the big green. Now at this point, he might be one of the best oppers in his entire country. So he decides, maybe I can turn this into a living. So he would go on to join his first ever team, Immunity. His in-game name was Ricky. There are various Counter-Strike players that come to my mind when talking about a topic like this, but I think it just makes sense to start off with Ricky because I remember him so vividly. Well, after remembering that he exists, of course. Now, after Immunity, where he would post a solid 1.1 rating and win a B-tier tournament, he would upgrade to Renegades. At the time, they were the best team in Australia, so this was a massive upgrade for him, and now he would be playing with some absolute legends in JKS, that damn smile, Azur, Ustillo, and Yam. Now, this team was good, but there was just a hump that they couldn't seem to get over. Getting second at multiple high-tier tournaments, Renegades would decide that changes were needed, and the one to get axed would be Ricky. This is where Ricky would make one of the most drastic changes of his entire career. His time on Renegades had turned him off from the Australian scene, and he would turn to an even more cursed one, North America. During his time on CLG, he was easily one of their best players, posting a 1.12 rating, although for some reason, this wouldn't even last a year, before he would eventually move to Rogue. At the time, I was a small child and a large CS enjoyer, so this is where Ricky really stamped himself into my brain. This cursed-ass Rogue roster included Legend, Kiko, Hadian, Ricky, Sick, and Vice. What in the goddamn fuck am I looking at right now? This team would be fine. Their best achievement would be finishing second at 2 A-tier tournaments, and then after this he would bounce to Complexity with Nothing, Shazam, Def, and Stanislaw. Once again, he would leave this team in less than a year. At this point, he was sick of getting tossed around like Willie Phillips and moved back to Australia to compete on a tier 2 team. Now, what surprised me is Grandpa still plays on a team today in the big old 2025 on Mindfree, and he's still doing pretty decent, posting a 1.07 rating. 8! That's an 8! I meant 8! During his time on the team. Now, players like Ricky often get forgotten because they're good, but they're not good enough to really stamp themselves onto any certain team. They're kind of just a floater, free agent type of player that just seem to never really carve a home out for themselves, but they do just enough to keep getting chances and chances and chances. Unfortunately, he never did enough to really get remembered by the broader Counter-Strike community. Who's a good example of this today? I guess the most similar player to him today is probably Nock, but they've both been tossed around, and Nock's always been good, just not great. He'll probably be forgotten when he stops playing, which is sad. You know what else is sad? November 12th, 2024. Virtus Pro have just benched longtime op IGL, Jame. This is incredibly bittersweet, but I get it. Now, I don't think it's crazy to say that Jame is a legend of the game. I mean, he's a major winner. At points, star opper. And the way he calls his team is just so different from anyone else in the scene. It's very distinct, with an emphasis on economy and a whole lot of saving. So much so, we now have the iconic Jame time. By this point, he's been on VP for so long, it's hard to remember a time before that. August 28th, 2019. The second major of 2019 is about to begin. In attendance would be tier 2 team of Vanguard. They had been making a couple waves recently, beating Hellraisers in a B-tier LAN, Furia in an A-tier LAN, and Windstrike in an A-tier LAN. 3 trophies in 2019 was great, but it wasn't against the best of the best. At this major, they were looking to change that. This young team consisted of Buster, Kicker, Gambit Legend Adren, Op IGL Jame, and an incredibly interesting player named Sanji. He was an absolute fan favorite where he captivated people with his 0.97 rating. Well, there's a lot more to Sanji than meets the eye. He would gain the respect of everyone from his role on the team. Maybe the most selfless role I have personally ever seen a player take up. He was by all means the team's bitch. His sole purpose was to set up the other pieces on the team. Let me show you an example. At that major, a Vanguard's first game would be against Complexity. They lose pistol. But round 2, instead of full saving, a Dren full buys a Deagle, while Sanji saves with a Glock. They lose. Round 3, normally you'd be good for a full buy if everyone saved, but no. Since a Dren full bought that Deagle, he has no money. But this was all a part of the plan. Sanji would spend $4,650, give an SG-553 to a Dren, and get traded a MAC-10. They could have gone into this round with full guns, but they forced a Deagle last because why not? Let's just give Sanji an SMG. They end up winning this round, and guess what the next round's buy looks like? Sanji, SMG, the rest have AKs. It was like this all the time. This round, the entire team would be working map control together besides Sanji. He was sent with a UMP to simply do nothing but hold apps. They'd win this round with Sanji dying and losing his UMP and would go into the next round fairly rich. Buster had 4,700, James had 3,700, and they already had bought everything they needed. It didn't fucking matter. Enjoy using a MAC-10, Sanji. Get your bitch ass over to apps and make it work. The weirdest part is Sanji was good mechanically. He could always do stuff like this, but his role in the team was the bitch role, so he just continued to do what he was told. Anyways, a Vanguard would win this match, then lose, win, lose. Fuck boys. We're now in a 2-2 BO3 for our major lives. It was against Simon. They'd win 2-1. I mean, who even are these Simon guys? Oh. Being one of the last teams to sneak through 3-2, a Vanguard were not a popular pick to the playoffs. Although, with the power of friendship and the SMG King Sanji, they would somehow go 3-1 and make the playoffs. This had easily been the best run this core had ever gone on. In the quarters, they would play Vitality, the second best team in the world. Give up. There's no way you can beat them. They would need a crazy upset here. But then again, it is Vitality in the major playoffs. I mean, what are we even talking about here? Then they would play in a surprising semifinals match against Renegades. Map 1 was Cinema. Map 2 was Binema. Like garbage. It's like garbage. Unfortunately, they'd play Prime Astralis in the finals, where our GOAT would actually top frag. But I mean, the amount of magical runs that died to Astralis in this era was just sad. They never had a chance, really. This insane major run is how this team would get picked up by VP. And Sanji would play on VP for a little under 2 years before getting benched. And he would play his last ever match on October 16th, 2021. After this, he would sit on VP's bench for around a year and a half and eventually transition from player into coach. The entire time, slowly fading from the public eye. Stop! This video is sponsored by no one. It's sponsored by you guys. Specifically, RGPL. You guys can now become a channel member if you would like. There are 3 tiers, a 99-cent tier, a $5 tier, and a $10 tier. They pretty much all do the same thing. You're gonna get a shout out in every video I post and early access. The one man who got a membership got to watch this video much earlier than everyone else. You get a cool role in the Discord if you care about that. And yeah, that's about it. There's not a ton. It's mostly just to support me and the content I'm making. I appreciate everyone for watching, even if you don't. Let's get back to these forgotten freaks, man. Russia seems to pop out players like no other country in the world. We have Monacy, Dawn, Shiro, Exile, Electronic, Verbal Abuser. And well, in 2018, it looked like we'd have another one of these players. XC Power would join Fours on April 23rd, 2018 as a 20-year-old opper. And during this time, he looked like truly one of the best oppers from Russia. I mean, he was simply insane. Now, it would take a while for Fours to really start up after he joined, but in 2019, they really hit a stride, making 5 A-tier LAN finals and winning 4 of them, one of which was the CIS Minor Championship. This win would qualify the team to the Star Ladder Berlin Major. And while Fours wouldn't pull off a miracle run like a Vanguard did, this tournament was very important for the team's young opper, as he would absolutely shine during this tournament. Match 1. They play against a Kerrigan-led mouse. They got dicked. In the atrocious loss, though, XE would still play fairly well. Next, Greyhound. Another good game that they would actually win. Furia, light work. Xe puts up another great game. And next, they would play G2 for qualification. After an insane map 1, they would end up losing the series, but Xe would put up another 1.2. His ability to consistently put up 1.2 ratings in wins and losses is absurd. Next up, they have a 2-2 game for their major lives, and they'd have to play Dream Eaters. They got their dreams eaten. Everyone on 4s shits the bed, besides Xe, of course. This would cause them to bomb out of the major 2-3 in the opening stage. But here were 4's stats for the event. Jerry, Flit, Almazar, Face Crack, and then all the way above them is Xe Power. He proved during this tournament to be an incredibly reliable opper and honestly a pistol god, which for a position as important as the opper, that is incredibly valuable. Although while it looked like this would be the start of something incredible, 2019 was actually his peak. In 2020, they would only win 2 B-tier online tournaments, and that was it. Due to this, 4's would completely revamp the roster and eventually kick Xe Power from the team. On September 1st, 2021, they would bring in a new opping talent in Zorte. During his 3 years on 4's, he would post a 1.17 rating, and after leaving 4's, he would bounce from team to team. And during this time, you can really see his form start to deteriorate. His next team after 4's, a 1.16 rating, still very good, but then a 1.09 to a 1.09. He would eventually join Perry Vision and drop a 0.89 rating with the team. He is now 26 and currently not on a team. It looks like his career might just be over. It looked like he had great potential, but in hindsight, his prime was just that 1 year in 2019, and we will never see prime Xe Power like that ever again. I'm sure we all know of Nexa. He played at one of the most popular teams in the world, G2, would leave G2, would rejoin G2, and what some consider to be the worst roster move of all time, which is fair. But I would argue Stabby to Astralis and the team nearly being now bankrupt might be a little worse. Anyways, I could dog on Astralis for 20 minutes straight, man. You guys want an Astralis hate video? At the start of Nexa's career, he would bounce from team to team, seemingly never finding his home. But eventually, after a short stint with, yes, Renegades, he would land in a European mixed team called Man's Not Hot, where he would find his partner in crime for the next 2 years, Esperanto. When Esperanto and Nexa first met, he was a crackhead 16-year-old entry fragger from Lithuania, like a great value donk, and he looked like a goddamn prodigy. During his time in the team, they would actually have fairly good success, and he would drop a 1.17 rating. This EU mixed team would garner the attention of orgs very quickly, with the Imperial eventually being the one that signed them. Their time in this org was by all means kind of a shit show. During their 8 months with the org, there were constant player transactions, and it seemed like they would never have a solid starting 5. It ended up getting so bad they trialed goddamn Loba. Even with this, they would win 2 A-tier lands, which is incredibly impressive considering the flow of players in and out of the team. In the first land they won, Copenhagen Games 2018, Esperanto would be the highest rated player at the event with a 1.24 rating. At the second land they won, DreamHack Open Summer 2018, he would once again be the highest rated player with a 1.37 and win the MVP award. Eventually, the 2 most stable and exciting pieces of the team, IGL Nexa and young star rifler Esperanto, would be acquired by Valiant. Esperanto would end his time on Imperial with a 1.2 rating and a 1.13 against top 20 teams. This new team would consist of Nexa, Esperanto, Otto ND, Hunter, and Letny. And my god, did Nexa and Esperanto continue to cook. Their first match on Valiant would be a 16-0, and Esperanto would drop a 1.93. They'd make 3 finals, win 2, and then Valiant would rebrand to Crazy. An awful rebrand, in my opinion. This was right before the Star Ladder Berlin Major. This is just a Star Ladder Berlin Major retrospective video, I guess. Now that this team had been making waves in the tier 2 scene, it was time to see what they could do against the best teams in the world. And it would go incredibly well. They'd make it through the opening stage 3-1. Although it seemed like Esperanto was starting to get overshadowed. IGL Nexa was fucking on fire, dropping a 1.26 in the opening stage while calling. Teammate Hunter was right behind him with a 1.23, and Esperanto would only drop a 1. In the next stage, they started incredibly strong. A loss against Liquid, But wins against NIP and FaZe, they were 2-1. Against NIP, Esperanto would drop a 1.72, and against FaZe, a 1.55. Our boy was bad. And as a reward for going 2-1, they would get to play Prime Astralis, the Dream Killers. By the grace of God, they would win Map 2 in a 31-29 game. They would take the best team in the world to 3 maps, but that's where the run would end. Esperanto would only drop a 0.88 over the series. But they're not out of the tournament yet. They still have one more BO3 to decide if they can make playoffs. And they would have to play Electronic Simple Na'Vi. It would once again go to 3 maps, but this Na'Vi team is just too strong, man. All things considered, an absolutely incredible run from the team, but they would just fall short in both of their qualification series, being 1 map away from the playoffs. But there was still good news to come out of this. See, the magical part of majors is everyone is watching. And apparently, one org that was keeping a close eye on the situation was G2. The team had gotten their attention, and G2 wanted a piece of the pie. At the time, they were a French team, but had been incredibly underwhelming, and it was time for them to go international. So they would poach Nexa and Hunter, but young star entry fragger Esperanto would be left to rot. Shortly after Nexa and Hunter left the team, Crazy would sell the roster to Contact Gaming, where Esperanto would play for another year, but only post a 1.06 rating. It was looking like his form was already starting to decline. Once his contract expired in early 2021, he would leave the team and join Gorillas for only a month and then recreate the EU mixed team Man's Not Hot. It would only exist for 2 months before he would move to the Budapest 5, and once again, that would not last long. Once CS2 started, he would join 9 Academy, but that also wouldn't last long. Today, he's currently 23 with no team. He was a young star entry rifler who looked like he had an incredibly bright career ahead of him, but once he got overshadowed by Nexa and Hunter at the major, he was left behind to never recover. Like most sports, Counter-Strike is an incredibly cutthroat industry. You can be on top of the world one year, and the next, you might be completely out of it. If you don't do something incredibly memorable, or are quite literally the best, you will fade from public conscience. Things move fast. But while these players may have been forgotten, I refuse to let them die. Here, guys, you can have a nice little home on my Galil. If nobody else will, I will now at least remember you forever. Guys, I'm sorry for the delay on videos. If you couldn't tell, I moved. Peep the new office. Hoping to start pumping out more videos again. Along with that, I'm streaming on YouTube and Twitch. Join the Discord. And yeah, I think that's it. I'll see you guys in the next one.